So for the whole of the last month, I've been working on improving my F2L, specifically my second and third pair solving. Here's how it went. So I started the month timing how long it took me from cross all the way to solving 3 F2L pairs. I worked out that in order to achieve my goal of a sub 12 average, I would need to be solving the first 3 F2L pairs in pretty much 7 seconds flat. So I worked out 7.01 seconds. My plan had 3 steps. I was going to get better algorithms so I could make sure I am solving each F2L pair in 8 moves or less. I was going to slow down my turning. I worked out that if I could get a maximum of 8 moves per pair, as well as a maximum of 8 moves for the cross, I would need to be turning at roughly 4 moves per second. That's a lot slower than what I normally feel like I'm turning at. So my second step was just to slow everything down. Finally, I wanted to improve the order to which I solved the pairs. So making sure I'm putting stuff in the back slots first, so I've got more pieces available to see towards the end. So let's talk about those in order. Firstly, the getting better algs. This turned out not to be as necessary as I thought. What I discovered was with enough inspection, with enough kind of paying attention to what I'm doing, it's actually not that hard to solve most F2L cases in under 8 moves, especially if you are allowing yourself F and B moves. As I worked out, which I'll get into in a moment, if I'm turning at 4 moves per second, the occasional F and B move actually isn't so difficult to implement, so I didn't have so much to learn. In terms of algorithms that are worth learning, I definitely recommend looking at these backslot insertions. They can help to cut down either cube rotations and lower your move count significantly, as well as this case for solving a pair that isn't together on the front. Depending on where you're at, there may be other algorithms that would be useful to you. These are the ones just specifically stuck out to me as if I didn't know them, I could see this being a much more difficult task. Okay, now on to the second point. I was trying to slow down my turning to 4 moves per second. For this, I ended up using a metronome. I used to use a metronome a long time ago when I was averaging around 40 seconds, and I tried to use it to encourage me to speed up my turning. I didn't really find this very useful, and I've heard a lot of other people say that they don't necessarily recommend using a metronome to try and encourage you to move faster, because it restricts the kind of flow that you need to have. So a lot of the time when you're learning to move faster, you need to learn how to relax and just keep everything flowing with very little effort. And metronomes kind of don't really allow you to do that. Where metronomes can be really useful, however, is to encourage you to slow down. So once you know you can already move at a certain speed and flow and relax and whatever it is you need to do, it can be really useful to give yourself specific time to stop and think. My goal was to keep my move count the same while gradually speeding up my thinking time. To do this, I use the metronome at different speeds. So if I want to be able to solve 4 moves per second in 7 seconds with a maximum of 8 moves per stage, then what I can do is I can set the metronome to 60 BPM, that would be 1 turn per second, and try to solve the first 3 F2L pairs in 28 seconds. In other words, by turning 4 times slower, I'm giving myself 4 times longer to think. If I could manage an average of 100 with a time of 28 seconds or lower, then I would increase to 2 moves per second, so 120 beats per minute on the metronome, and try to solve in 14 seconds or less. Then move up to 3 seconds with a time of, I believe it was around 10. And then finally to 4 turns per second, getting my average of 7 seconds. This was by far the most useful training tool I employed. I'm almost convinced that if I just kept this up for another couple of months, I could probably get my average down to where I want it to be. And it's definitely something I'm going to revisit in later months. While I never quite managed to get it up to 4 moves per second while getting the desired average, it did really show me how I really didn't need to be turning so fast in the first place. I quite often, when I was only doing 2 moves per second or 3 moves per second, I was getting times occasionally that were 7 seconds for my entire F2L anyway. So it really showed me that by slowing down the turns, I could just be doing things more efficiently. And I know I kind of already knew that, but sometimes it takes running through the drills and trying them out before you really appreciate that. Finally, I was trying to optimize the order in which I solved my F2L pairs. So I wanted to make sure I was always filling in the back slots before my final pair went into one of the 2 front slots. I'm not sure this one really helped my time that much right now, although I am sure it will as I start trying to go for faster and faster times. But the strategy I used for this was also with the metronome. So if I was training my turning speed at 3 moves per second, I would also train 100 solves at the one below. So if I'm on 3 moves per second, I would be doing this 2 moves per second, or if I was training 2 moves per second for my turning speed, I would be doing this at 1 move per second. And the idea was basically exactly what I needed to do. So I was not allowed any solves that did not solve into the back 2 slots first before solving a front slot. Included in the rules, I was allowed as many cube rotations as I liked, so I was allowed to turn the cube, just only in a way that would leave the solved pair at the back. This is a problem that I find I normally have even if I remember to solve something into the back. A lot of the time I am not good at rotating in a way that keeps that pair at the back. Quite often I end up bringing it to the front and losing visibility of pieces later on. So while it felt like maybe quite a basic exercise, I think that one really helped me a lot. Okay, so now on to the important stuff. Did it actually improve? So I said I needed to end up with a time of 7.01 seconds for my first 3 F2L pairs. Well, by the end of the month, I took another average of 100 and I got 8.06. So almost a second slower. So not great that it's not what I wanted, but also worth bearing in mind that is only a second off my time with all of the other stages that I've been practicing. That's a pretty good sign for me that while I haven't been looking at it directly, my cross and my first pair solving have been improving slightly as well. Or if they haven't, that my second 2 F2L pairs improved so much that it cancelled out the difference. The really fun part, however, was what happened to my regular 3x3 solves. So if you recall from the end of the last month, I had a pretty horrible time with my averages. I ended up just getting slower and slower fairly steadily throughout the month. Well, this month it did completely the opposite. I shot down to 14 seconds in the first couple of days and ended up even breaking the 14.5 barrier. Kind of fluctuated up and down from there, but it felt like everything was steadily hanging out around 14.6 or 7 for most of the rest of the month. So times did start to dropped quite quickly and stayed there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so that is how things went for the month. Next month I will be looking at my final F2L pair and obviously preparing for the last layer, so looking at edge orientation and things like that. Stay tuned for the next video. Otherwise, thank you for watching and I will see you next time.